So we're talking about water today because
it's on everybody's mind if you're in the Western U.S.
Yeah.
Right? It's in the news all the time. The
Yeah,
Colorado
because
River's in trouble. Lake Powell's almost empty.
the whole, the hipsters and techies are drying out up there in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, it's going to be 111 in Portland, apparently, which seems like you can't possibly live outside in that humidity at 111 degrees.
It doesn't do that. They don't do that there.
No,
they don't know
it
how to
doesn't.
do that.
111. That's insane. And, of course, the country's probably going to catch on, well, at least the western half, probably going to catch on fire again and cover the country in smoke.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to happen. And it's really, really a drag because smoke really does float everywhere. And it's I was talking to somebody, talking to a friend of mine today, actually. I think he's in Santa Rosa, somewhere down there in that area, California. And he said last year, it almost came over the fires almost came over the hill to his house, and he heard like 2 propane tanks on the other side of the hill explode, and he says every year we're thinking like this is gonna be the year every year, and then of course it's brittle to this year.
We were talking about, I'm not going to go too long on this, but we were talking about climate change and global warming and climate refugees, and it's generally thought to be, people from Honduras or El Salvador or Guatemala or something.
Right.
But I know somebody who moved here last year, just before, maybe at the beginning of the pandemic, from the Napa area.
Oh, yeah.
And they basically fled because they were sick of forest fires.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you would think that the big thing is like, oh, they're going to come here and they can just buy a house, right? Because their house is worth a fortune. It's in Napa Valley. Mm-hmm. The problem is that people are having trouble getting insurance for their houses in that area because it's such a fire danger. So it's the climate refugee is a real thing. They're it's within our own borders. Well,
and we'll get on to because this could easily turn into an Are We Recording episode, but because I have a thing that came up in the I think it came up in BBC today or something like that, maybe the Guardian, reporting on the Florida Keys and the fact that their water's rising.
Right.
And what their problem is that they're not going to be able to get mortgages on their houses soon because who's going to give you a mortgage on a house that's probably going to sink into the ocean in the next couple of years?
Right.
And then of course that means you can't sell your house. That means you're into this house for whatever the value, and now you can't afford it. And some of those people will survive. Some of those people have maybe more money than just their house, but a lot of people don't. So
this is our thing, right? Today's topic is water, and yours is about like the fighting over the water, and mine is about too much water.
So I'm watching. You ever see the movie Chinatown with Jack Nicholson?
Yeah,
great film.
Yeah,
really, really great film. Academy Award-winning film. I think it won the Academy Award that year. Tremendous film, and I'm watching it with my girlfriend Ingrid, and and she'd never seen it, and I'm just watching this. I haven't seen it in 20 years or so, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, what is so familiar about this story? And then I remember that the story of Chinatown is the backbone of it. The writer based it on the California water wars, which I hadn't, I knew because of Mulholland and Mulholland Drive, and he's a famous, sort of LA character. And I'd looked into it and read about it years ago, but I was up for a refresher. I start to read it, and I realized this is perfect for our podcast and topical for today. So the title I titled mine. It's titled Los Angeles, the Owens Valley, and the California Water Wars, and it's such a fascinating story. So we're going back a little over 100 years now. A little more than that, actually, once we really get into it. In 1913, the city of Los Angeles diverted the Owens River via an aqueduct to boost the city's dwindling water supply. So the Owens River is, it's an inland valley, the Owens Valley, and there's a river there, and it's pretty lush. And Los Angeles is growing and it needs water. So settling in the Owens Valley, it starts with this Homestead Act in 1862, and prior to that, the valley was the home to a few ranchers who grazed cattle on this grassy land. They wrestled the land from the Paiute tribe, with the help of the U.S. Army and the Owens Valley, in what was the Owens Valley Indian War of 1862. Never heard of it, but apparently it was a thing. And I'm sure it was probably not very cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. But, fortunately, the white man made things better.
As always,
right? Yeah.
Right? As always, yeah. Guaranteed.
Right.
It's like a stamp of
That's right.
guaranteed on the. So, the Homestead Act allows people to buy up to 160 acres of land. And each acre is $1.25. So, and they wanted small farms. That's why it's 160 acres. They didn't want to have these big, they wanted to actually settle the valley. So that's what the Homestead Act's intention was. And later, in 1877, the area had grown in population, and they upped the amount of land that a person could buy to 640 acres. So that shift in land cap, it brought all these speculators in who grabbed up as much fertile land as they could, because there was so much plentiful water, and their hope was that they'd then boost the prices and resell the property, right? So at the same time, sort of, start of the, around 1900, 1902, in Los Angeles, the population's really exploding, and these two guys, Frederick Eaton and William Mulholland, who had been working together at what was then the privately held Los Angeles Water Company, they're developing a vision as to the city's future. And I mean, as much as this story kind of there's a lot to think about while you're listening to this story. Obviously, there's underhanded tactics, there's money grabbing, there's a lot of that happens in this story. It's why it's the backbone of a Hollywood film and an Academy Award-winning Hollywood film. But what's equally interesting is the mechanics of how ultimately it worked, because we've laughed about the fact that there are all these conspiracies and people think things are happening, but you can't get a core of 5 people to do anything together, right, without one of them screwing it up, right? I mean, it's Reservoir Dogs. It's something. Right. Someone's going to blow it, right?
Yep.
Well, this is sort of like one of those master criminal.
This is that one time.
This is like the Ocean's 11 if it was a real thing and it was based on the backdrop of a boring water district thing, or water rights. So these guys have this vision for the future of Los Angeles, and they truly do. They think that the city has the ability to expand and explode and become something really significant, and they believe the key to the vision is water. So Los Angeles is pretty quickly outgrowing its water supply, and Eaton and Mulholland, they really understand this because of the work they'd been doing. And Eaton, at this point, has been elected mayor of Los Angeles, and he'd been instrumental in taking the water company over, to be controlled by the city. So it was privatized, and then he made sure he got it sort of controlled by the city. He believed the people should control the water. I don't know. That makes you think he might be sort of for the people. That's really not the case, but he probably had something else going on there. But anyway, so these guys are acutely aware of the need for water, and they look to the Sierra Nevada mountain range and the snowmelt runoff, which would provide ample supply for the city's needs, and they realize this. But the problem is the city has no rights to the water, and as you know, water rights, I mean, it's a thing. It's a real thing.
Oh, yeah. I have a water rights attorney in the family.
Yeah. Water rights
and of course they live in California.
I bet they do. They probably do quite well. So they have no rights. So the city has no rights to the water. And in fact, right around that time, the United States Bureau of Reclamation is planning to build an irrigation system to support the farmers in the Owens Valley. This would have been pretty devastating to the men's plans, so they set out using underhanded tactics to obtain the water rights and block this irrigation scheme. So Eaton, he's using inside information through an associate, a guy he knows at the Bureau of Reclamation. He begins buying up land in the Owens Valley. These guys are wealthy. They'd worked at a private company. They'd been pretty high up. They'd done real well for themselves. So he begins buying up land in the Owens Valley, and he's paying more than market value, so people will sell to him. But his hope is that he's eventually going to sell the land back to Los Angeles for even more money, right? Now, at the same time, Mulholland is in Los Angeles, and he's waging this public opinion war. He's claiming that LA needs far more water to grow than it really does at this time. He's saying instead of like, whatever, I don't know, 10 million gallons a day, we need 50 million gallons a day, whatever. He's just bloating this there to try to justify the need for such a large water supply as the Owens Valley has to offer. So he's telling this to like the population of Los Angeles, and at the same time, while planning, while he's planning to drain this valley of water, he's telling the local residents in the Owens Valley that the city planned only to draw off their unused water, not their sort of like their scrap water.
So he's lying
to everybody.
When is a wealthy speculator ever done something like that?
No, I can't think of a time.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is a really nice road that I think very rich people live off of that run over a big mountain in Los Angeles named after this fella.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it. And there's another movie.
There's a movie. Yeah, there's a movie named after him. What is it? David Lynch film.
Yeah.
So this fight eventually goes to Washington because where Eaton's out there and he's got this California senator named Frank Flint, and they're pleading their case to Theodore Roosevelt, whose approval they absolutely need to build an aqueduct because they would have to cross federal lands. Well, the president sides with Los Angeles and approves the land use. So this plan's in motion, and the farmers are sold out their rights right away because now Los Angeles is trying to buy the land. Eaton had bought a bunch of the land, knowing that this was going to happen. So I think he held on to a lot of it. I think he actually kept a lot of his land out there. But he's probably enriched himself fairly well. He's probably bought quite a bit of it. So the farmers are selling out their land, but Los Angeles is undercutting them now.
Uh-huh.
The first 20 years of sales, they lowball all the farmers. The last holdouts actually got paid what their land was worth, but that's so they're just every turn they're sticking it to people, So the aqueduct was built, is going to be built, and the people of Los Angeles are going to be assured their water supply, right? But so it's all in plans in motion. Here we go, but not exactly what happened. That sort of seems like, okay, great, sort of a short story, but there was so much more to it. Eaton and Mulholland, what they were actually doing was when they were draining the Owens Valley, and they diverted that water to the San Fernando Valley, which is north of Los Angeles. It's not as fertile at all, but it had a really great aquifer. These guys know all about this stuff. And they knew the water would be stable there, and it wouldn't evaporate as much and all this other stuff. So they divert the water up to the San Fernando Valley, essentially as a holding tank to eventually pump it down into Los Angeles. Again, more water than they need. But the water, but now that they've got the water up in the San Fernando Valley, they want to use it in the San Fernando Valley because they've got too much. But they can't use it in the San Fernando Valley because there is a charter that the city of Los Angeles has that states that 2/3 of the city's voters have to agree to any sale, lease, or other use of the city's water supply. And now this is the city's water supply, right? So to get around this, a large part of the San Fernando Valley is annexed and becomes part of Greater Los Angeles, all by design, right? So they don't have to get a vote to irrigate the San Fernando Valley, which is not what they said they were going to use this water for.
Right.
And way more water than they say they needed for the city. They don't have to vote. They've now sort of extended the city line to cover a big part of the San Fernando Valley, and now they can use it without approval. So the valley is now considered part of the city. No voter approval necessary. And they, with the massively inflated amount of water that Mulholland had convinced the residents they need, right? So as all of this was unfolding, a contingent of wealthy people, you're going to love this, who've been fed inside information by Eaton all along, have secretly been buying up land in the San Fernando Valley.
Yes.
At the same time using their connections to support the eventual building of the aqueduct. So these guys, so they're double dip. So Eaton's buying land in the Owens Valley. He's selling it to Los Angeles to make money, so that because they need the land so they can divert this water. So, but at the same time, he's telling people where the water's gonna go to buy land, and they go up and buy a ton of land too. And they're powerful people, so they help support all this happening, right? They're lobbying these powerful people with money. They're lobbying other powerful people to make this happen. They are literally dumping water. This is to get approval. They're literally dumping water from the LA reservoirs into the sewers, and using the Los Angeles Times at the time to claim that the city's facing a serious drought. They're dumping water to make it look like the aqueducts the water storage supplies in Los Angeles reservoirs are low, so they can say, hey, the reservoir's really low. We need this water.
Right.
We're in a drought. They weren't. They were. I mean, they may have been in a drought, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as they did. They orchestrated this entire thing.
Imagine what they could have done had they been this smart and conniving, but not evil.
Right. Yeah. For the good. Well, they did a lot for themselves, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Because now you've stolen the water from this one valley. You've moved it to the other valley far more than you needed, under the guise of pumping it into the city. But you've bought land in the area of the storage area, and then expanded the boundary of the city so you could irrigate that land without voter approval, and thereby making the land much more valuable. And by the way, you and your pals bought up all the land.
Right.
There is a genius to this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, imagine what you could do with that genius if your intention was not just to enrich yourselves.
You become like a shaved head super criminal with like a cat on your lap that you pet.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the X-Men, right?
Yeah, I think it's like
it's or is that Dr.
James
Evil?
Bond.
I'm not really sure.
There's a James Bond character that pets the cat.
Dr. Evil from Austin
one of
Powers.
That one.
Yeah.
They're all
It's all the same.
Bezos has a cat, doesn't he?
Probably.
I'm sure he has a cat that just lies in his lap. He just pets it and it purrs. Well, he just lays waste.
This is why we will never have billions of dollars, because we just can't think of this complex.
Well, you're wrong, Bezos. And
Right.
if you're wrong, Bezos, and we've already wronged Bezos a few times.
Yes, we
have. So the San Fernando Valley is now abundant with water. And now, of course, the land has skyrocketed, and that's what they orchestrated all of this. They planned the whole thing, So Mulholland, so now this is all approved. The guys up there own their land. They get the rights. They've now irrigating their land. Everyone's making money, et cetera, et cetera. Well, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. But they're not doing that yet. I've jumped ahead. They're going to, but they now have to build the aqueduct. So Mulholland, he directs to his credit, this very complicated, ambitious building of this 233-mile aqueduct takes 5 years to build between 1907 and 1913. The Owens Valley, which was once called the quote-unquote Switzerland of California, it turns into a desert as demand for the water in the San Fernando Valley. Those investors, they just continue to demand more water. Of course, we just want the unused water.
Right.
Now we want a little bit more. And next thing you know, they've sucked the valley dry.
I've been to the Owens Valley, and this was back when I would say 2004 or so, to go to Death Valley. And, you go over the mountains and you can get over to the Owens Valley. And at that time, Lake Owens was just a dry lake bed that was just a toxic, bed of dust, salinity, and whatever else that would blow around the valley whenever the winds blew.
Exactly. So that's exactly what happens to it. So the water from the lake is next, and they suck out the water from the lake. By 1924, the lake is drained, right?
So it's been empty for a long time.
Yeah. So the tensions between the residents of the Owens Valley and Mulholland escalate. And in 1924, this group of ranchers, they dynamite part of the aqueduct. But shortly after that, the Inyo County Bank, which is the back then you had one bank for your area, small area ultimately, it collapses, and the bank's owners are indicted for embezzlement, and they claim they were like hiding money because they were trying to help the locals. People weren't able to pay their loans back, whatever. But either way, they're indicted. They go to jail. And since all the local businesses and their inhabitants use that bank, the locals are left with with whatever they kind of had in their possession, and whatever cash they had on hand, and that includes many of the people who had sold their land to Los Angeles because they'd gotten all this money and sold most of their land, kept maybe a little homestead, and then they put it in the bank. And
so some of these people lost everything.
Everything. They lost everything. So by 1928, Los Angeles owned 90% of the water rights in the valley, and the agriculture is dead in like less than 30 years. They just wiped out this valley. And to your point about the lake, this is really just kind of additional little sort of like turn of the screw, right? Today, Owens Lake's essentially a dry lake bed. It's made up of a variety of minerals that in wet years, like you're saying, turns the lowest sort of low point of the dry lake into this muddy chemical soup of like minerals that are just alkaline, acidic, and just just kill you, you know? And the ground temperatures out there, because you're not far from Death Valley, they can go up above 150 degrees, and this brine dries out into a dust, which winds can stir up and creates this carcinogenic alkali dust storm, and it causes respiratory problems to like all around the area, to the nearby. It blows everywhere.
We took your land. We took your money.
Right.
Here's some lung cancer.
We're going to leave you with this. Yeah, we're leaving you with this. We're
Thanks
just taking
the water.
Well, yeah, no water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and have you been to Los Angeles?
No.
I don't think it was worth it. Just between you and me. I don't think that was worth it.
But I've seen where their water comes from.
You've been to their former water source. Yeah, you're their water source, right? Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that was the right. I mean, maybe there was a time. Maybe that was the 40s.
Right.
It was kind of cool. 50s. Maybe the 60s. After that, I think it's probably
all downhill.
Yeah, and I don't know where they're getting the water from now. They tried to steal some water from Mono Lake, from what I understand. And
yes. Well, yeah. I from what I remember is all those cool structures that you see in Mono Lake.
Yeah.
It's like I guess those were because the water was receding, right?
Right.
I think.
Yeah, they tried to, and then they got shut down with it. And I don't know where they're going to get it next, because I don't think there's much left.
Does some of the water come from the Colorado? I mean, that's
it might. There might be some, but that's a problem too now because Colorado's low. But they never, I think Santa Barbara, a few years back, built some plants that can sort of like exchange seawater, filter seawater, desalinate the seawater. But Los Angeles, no interest, I don't think. I guess it's just too easy to steal.
Right.
Why get a job if you can steal it?
Well, I'm wondering, so this 2013 report says that the city of Los Angeles water comes from three main sources: Owens River, Northern California, and the Colorado River, and groundwater. That sounds like four sources to me, but
that's right.
They lumped Northern California and the Colorado River into one for some reason. But I do remember driving, like from Death Valley. No, this was a separate drive. But driving between, we were going from the Bay Area we were heading towards New Mexico. So we went down past LA, but we didn't go into LA, and we went through Oildale and Bakerville or whatever it is.
That's where you want to go anyway. You don't really want to go into the city. Those are the really nice areas.
Yeah, those are the really nice areas. I love the like 2000 oil pumps and the barren dirt and the 104 degree temperature.
That's great.
In February. And when you're driving along, you see these aqueducts.
Yeah.
And my thought, having come from Michigan, was like, why is it all uncovered in the desert? Yeah. And so I asked my uncle, who was some kind of engineer in California, and he's like, yeah, it's the amount of they lose to evaporation is ridiculous.
I bet. Yeah.
It's just like you just built a stream through the desert.
Yeah. Yeah, through like one of the hottest place in the country, probably.
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen to like a huge portion of that water?
Right.
And then it's got to go all the way to the San Fernando Valley and then down to the city at some point. Somehow they pump it. I'm sure they've got like, at that point, they're probably piping it. And it's going to sit there. I mean, it's just like...
And going forward, I mean, what is the plan?
Yeah. Well, what I think about is like the fact that human beings... It's like we're all too willing to try to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
It's like this place doesn't sustain this amount of life.
No.
So let's not try. Let's not overdo it. That's to me the big takeaway is it's like if you keep if you build a false economy, eventually something's going to upend it, right?
Right.
Eventually there will be a water problem.
There was it might have been Planet Money. It was about water in I think the Central Valley. It was almond farming and stuff like that. It's huge. Apparently almonds take a lot of water.
A ton. It's like a gallon for like one
almond,
almond or something.
Right? Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Or 100 gallons
It's
or
insane.
a million gallons.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. And they asked this guy because what they're having to do there
Love
is
almonds,
they're
by the way.
pumping. What's that?
I love almonds.
I know almonds are great, but they have to drill lower and deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's just this this well goes deeper, and now they drain the water a little lower, so someone else has to drill another 25 feet, and then 50 feet, and 75 feet, and they asked him. They said, "Should you keep doing that?" And he was like, should." This is how I make money, and the water's down there, and basically, he was saying he's incentivized to do this,
right?
And the laws that we have for water rights are insane, and it's built by it's because of people like Mulholland, and that we have these crazy laws and rules. I mean, it benefits somebody.
Well, and it makes me think of that scene in There Will Be Blood where Daniel Day-Lewis he tries to buy this guy's land for the oil rights, and the guy won't sell. And then the guy finally needs to sell, and he goes to him and he goes, I drank your milkshake. And he shows how he just basically drilled a 45-degree angle underneath this guy's property and just sucked all the oil out. And it's like, I drank your milkshake. I don't
need it now. I don't need your rights anymore.
I don't need I don't need it anymore. And it kind of that drilling deeper and each one fighting to go deeper. It's kind of like you're just fighting to go to suck the next 10 feet of water up.
This whole thing is kind of what's referred to, I think, as the tragedy of the commons.
Ooh.
Which is, I think it's kind of like that whole game theory, which is kind of where you're trying to figure out the psychology of all the other people involved in something. And so, like in nuclear warfare, you're like, well, I'm not launching a missile because if I launch a missile, he's launching a missile, we're all dead. That's, But in this instance, it's if I don't take the water, the guy down the street takes it.
Yeah.
So therefore, I need to use all the water I can, regardless of whether I need it or not.
Right.
I would just pump it all out, pour it all over the desert, and let it evaporate.
Well, and that's the kind of thing that has a domino effect, right? I mean, and it also it speaks to what kind of we mentioned before the podcast started, which is, you're forced to maybe in some situations by others or by circumstance to become something you're not. You have to do something because if you don't, someone else will.
Right.
And that's just that's one of the worst. I think it's got to be one of the worst things you could ever say as a human being, if you have any morals whatsoever, is to say, well, if I don't do it, someone else will.
Right.
That's never like referring to something cool or good.
No.
Ever.
No,
you know what
never.
I mean? Like, well, if I don't, punch a duck in the face, someone else. I mean, it's always something bad.
When I worked in the bike shop, there was a guy who his thought was, if I don't eat all of the pizza, somebody else will.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you turned your back and you turned around again, the pizza was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the tragedy of the commons right there.
Yep.
The pizza was our common pizza, and he ate it all when no one paid attention.
If you're walking down the street in the middle of the night and you see a bike just sitting there, someone left their bike out, and you could steal it. And really, especially if you're in a major city in America, someone's probably going to steal it.
It might as well be me.
But is it right? Exactly. But what it boils down to is like, and then you start to justify it. You start to sort of say, well, and that's your justification. So you've just become someone. Well, you may be that person. Hopefully, if you're not, though, you just became someone that you're not. and you've justified it.
In this instance with the water and agriculture, because you mentioned how like the Owens Valley was actually good agriculture land.
Yeah.
But they pumped the water to farmers in places that are not good agriculture land, and they're wasting the water because it takes more water.
Right.
And the city keeps growing because they've provided the water.
Right.
It's like induced demand, like with highways. You like make the highway 6 lanes wide, and like a month later it's gridlock again because people are like, sweet, I can drive into town now instead of taking the train because there's 6 lanes.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I don't know when it ends. It ends when they run out of water, I guess.
Well, so that's what's happening in certain circumstances, and was listening to something actually sort of fortuitously today. I heard and by coincidence, they're talking about the fact that they can't. There's cities now that are saying, small cities at this point, that are saying developers cannot build anything more unless they prove they have water to like pump to these houses. They want to do a housing tract of 200 houses. Where are you gonna get the water from? Like, I
heard that's happening in southern Utah now.
There is a town that shut down that won't let any more building because of that. And you'd have to ask yourself, like, where's the water going to continue to come from in Los Angeles if one day, and what's going to happen? I mean, I don't want to like turn this into a discussion about the fantastic Kevin Costner film Waterworld or anything like that. But I mean, it's the opposite effect, right? There's no water. Well, in their case, there's no water because there's none to drink, right? There's no water, and there's a lot of us. That's not one of those things that you can work out. I mean, gas, water, there aren't many more, anything, power and water. Yeah. Without those things and food, it's chaos.
Yeah.
And a city like Los Angeles, 13,000 people in the greater Los Angeles, 13 million, I think. I think it's 13 million.
I was like, that 13,000, that was like in 1897 or something,
13,000. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or 1802 when they, that was the founding fathers, all 13,000 of them. But yeah, I mean, it'll become, it'll just become, I don't know, Escape from New York.
Well, and I mean that's why this is the perfect way to broaden the help is not on the way, because it certainly is not on the way.
Well, and also triggering this with a lack of water, you have a plethora of water.
Right.
Maybe a little too much.
Too much. And this is what I thought was fun. As I mentioned, I thought, hey, I should talk about our current situation with water. And then I thought, no, that would be like an entire podcast series talking about our current water situation. So I went for something that I could talk about in a shorter period of time. And this is talking about the Johnstown Flood.
The Johnstown Flood.
Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And this was a flood that occurred after the catastrophic failure of the South Fork Dam on the Little Conemaugh River, and it's spelled Conemaugh, but it's pronounced, I believe, Conemaugh, after several days of heavy rain. So with that said, I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about the dam itself and why it even existed. So the South Fork Dam was constructed between 1838 and 1853 by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as part of a cross-state canal system, because this was back really before the railroad was the main system of transportation. Okay. So, when you go to like DC and everything, there's like all those canals that had the little tow paths next to it, and you could tow things along it or take boats or whatever. It's really
common in England. Maybe you can have a cow tow your longboat or whatever your thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So it was the main line of public works. That's what it was called. When the railroads took over, though, as the main form of cargo transport, the canal was abandoned and sold to the Pennsylvania Railroad.
Okay.
Now, the dam and lake, the Lake Conemaugh, and the dam, the South Fork Dam that created the lake, which was really a reservoir, was part of the purchase, and they subsequently sold that to private interests. Mm-hmm. And the private interests were wealthy investors, of course, Mark.
Yeah. Those guys.
Right.
They move out from California.
More bald-headed guys with cats.
Yeah, right.
I assume.
Gout.
So The investors led by Henry Clay Frick purchased the reservoir to create a private lake for wealthy associates. Many of the associates were linked by association through Carnegie Steel.
That's real money right there.
Right. And yeah, I mean, this was Pennsylvania, right? What
Yeah.
It was steel, it was coal,
Yep.
it was industry.
Definitely.
So that's all of these people that became involved were in industry of some sort. And they made modifications to the dam because, they wanted to utilize this lake for fishing and sailing and in the winter, ice boating.
Oh.
Which I thought was kind of cool. It was like
sounds
ice
cool.
boating. I'd like to do some ice
I'd like to
boating.
do some ice boating. I don't know what that is, though, but I'd like to do it.
Some of the two of the things they did, which maybe made the dam a little more susceptible
To not being a dam anymore?
were to lower it to build a road on top.
Okay.
And they put a screen over the spillway.
Oh,
The reason they put the screen over the spillway was because they stocked the lake with expensive game fish.
Yeah. So is that going to like net debris and is that what that's going to do?
Yes.
And turn basically the screen into a sail that is being pushed by water.
Right.
That sounds
Lots of additional pressure on the dam.
You know how hard it would have been for you or I just to stand there and go back then and go, you know what that's going to do, right?
Right. Yeah. This is a really bad idea. Of course, they didn't have the sewer system and drains that I experienced in Denver with the torrential floods that would fill with branches and leaves and then flood the entire neighborhood. They hadn't experienced that.
They hadn't had
assuming,
that
right?
experience. Yeah.
But that's the first thing that would come to my mind. It's like,
gonna
that's a
come to mind.
disaster. And of course, they were expensive, game fish. So these wealthy people could fish for things that would never be in the lake otherwise.
Yeah. Invasive species. Always a good idea, too.
That's right.
Gosh, they're so full of good ideas.
So these modifications they proved costly. Additionally, the original system of relief pipes and valves were sold as scrap and never replaced. So normally a dam might have ways of like releasing the water
Right.
when there's too much pressure on the dam. They didn't have that.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
I can see the logic.
Right. I mean, do we need to think about the future?
I can see the logic.
Right.
Yeah. Let's get rid of what's been working.
Right.
And let's stock it with fish and put a screen over it and do a bunch of stuff that we don't know is going to work.
Right.
Put a road over the top.
The private club opened in 1881, and the members of the exclusive South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club built cottages and clubhouses up there. Eventually, more than 50 wealthy Pittsburgh steel, coal, and railroad industrialists formed the membership of the club.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Good group.
Yes.
Good group. Oh, to have been a fly on the wall of those.
Can you imagine?
At their communal meeting house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so here's the thing. The lake is 450 feet above Johnstown in elevation. So they're kind of like they get to look down on the normal, everyday people. Yeah. So which is as it should be.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
The lake was
like
about.
They could stand right on the edge of now they've got a roadway. They don't even have to stand in the woods. They can look down on them.
In fact, they might not have to stand. They could probably just take a horse.
Across.
Well, there were no cars yet, but
they
could take their horse and carriage across, or
have someone,
their horse.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So the lake was about 2 miles long and 1 mile wide, 60 feet deep at the dam. It has 72-foot high dam, 931 feet wide. Wow. It's an earthen dam, so it's made of dirt and rocks and stuff. Now, after the club opened, the dam would apparently spring frequent leaks, and it was patched with straw and mud.
Oh,
yeah. Or little boys with their fingers in the holes.
Right. Strong mud. Who determines how strong this mud is?
Kids from downstream,
Yeah.
They just pay them. Hold your finger.
Is that how they find out it sprung a leak? That someone comes up and knocks. Hey.
But he told them about the leak so many times they ignored it.
They just
And actually, it's almost like that. Now Johnstown itself, the main town downstream, was founded in 1800 by a Swiss immigrant named Joseph Johns at the confluence of the Stony Creek and Little Economa River, where the Economa River is formed. It grew with the completion of the Main Line Canal in 1836, and then the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then the Cambria Iron Works. By 1889, they had a population of about 30,000. And
A lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. And the town was already prone to flooding because it's in a valley. The large amounts of rain and snow runoff, come down these rivers at this confluence and overflow the banks. And because of this, the geography, everybody builds right near the river.
Yeah.
So everybody's living right along the river. And
it's a water source. It's the time when there wasn't water wasn't easily
and it's your
pumped.
transportation probably too,
Got a lot going for it, yeah.
They and because of the iron furnaces, they had all this slag. They're dumping that along the river, and then building on that. So they've created a narrow channel for the water to go through.
Come on, just asking for it. I mean, but from top to bottom in this thing.
I know,
top to bottom.
It's just like one thing after another, right?
Let's build on something that's just going to liquefy.
I just wonder, at the time, did they not know? I mean, that when you narrow a channel, the water flows faster. It's like putting water into a little hose.
Right.
And then it sprays out the end like a jet,
But at the same time, you also know that you'd like to live a little more close to the river than the guy next to you, and there's no more land, so I'm just going to fill in this land. And
yes.
See how that works,
and
too?
And there's probably some developer selling that land that didn't even exist before, right? There's some scheme.
We still see it today.
Someone's getting rich.
I mean, Alphabet City in the ABC streets in New York City, the reason they're ABC is because they ran out of streets. They filled it in, and then they at first, and then they just didn't know what to, they named them ABC. All that's just landfill. That's what people do.
That's what they do.
We're so smart.
The one thing we don't do that they apparently do in, say, like the Netherlands is we do the building part.
Yeah.
We don't do the safety part.
Right. Yeah.
We're not like, what happens if water rises?
It's called capitalism.
Right. Capitalism. Right.
It's called capitalism.
That would be socialism over in the Netherlands.
Right.
Come
on, man. Don't support the arts.
Now that there even downstream, just downstream along Route 56 is a plaque claiming the area is the deepest river gorge east of the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, that's a nice little distinction there, isn't it? Yeah. Living in the bottom of the deepest river gorge.
That's right.
Doesn't
and we're making it even narrower.
Yeah, it doesn't seem at all alarmist to me at all.
This one guy, Daniel Morel, he was like the president of Cambria Iron Works and some other things. He's like president of the oil and gas company and all these different things. He joins the club in order to keep an eye on the dam because he's so concerned. He has his own engineers, or he wants his own engineers and engineers from the Pennsylvania Railroad to inspect the dam. He even offers to make repairs partly with his own money.
Wow, this guy's all right.
And the club's president says, no. Benjamin F. Ruff, just, if you want to hold a grudge against someone, says no. His Daniel Morel's pleas are ignored.
It's just like, it's that age-old question, but why not?
Right.
Why not? What bad could come of us securing the dam? I'll even pay for some of it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good. We're good.
Well, and, so unfortunately, or whatever, Benjamin Ruff dies in 1887, before the flood happens. Daniel Morel, he died even 2 years before that, 1885.
Oh, wow.
So he doesn't make it to the flood either.
Okay.
So he probably died thinking, the flood never happened.
We're good.
Yeah. But on May 30th, 1889, what was dubbed the heaviest rainfall ever recorded in that part of the United States occurs.
Yeah.
It's estimated 6 to 10 inches of rain fall in 24 hours.
Wow.
Flooding and damage is widespread.
Yeah, you can imagine.
And on the 31st, Elias Unger, president of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, wakes to high water in the lake, nearly cresting the dam.
Wow.
He gathers a group of men to try and, deal with the situation. Mm-hmm. So they're trying
to do.
The first thing they try to do, Mark, is unclog the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not letting the water through the spillway.
Yeah.
Other men are trying to dig a ditch by hand to allow the water to, at the low end of the dam to allow the water through. and other ones are on top trying to build the dam higher. As the water's rising, it's
higher.
like 931 foot wide dam. Maybe we could build it higher.
Should we build it higher, guys? They
Like
should have thrown those guys on the digging crew. You might have gotten.
And others are on the front of the dam, just throwing rock and mud on it, trying to keep it from eroding and collapsing.
I mean, don't they realize at this point they're ants?
Right.
They're ants trying to hold back a bathtub.
And about as smart as ants because they have no idea.
None of this could possibly work. Even the ditch is probably the ditch and the unclogging are the best.
Right.
But it's too much. It's too little, too late at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the club's engineer even thinks maybe we could just like cut through the dam and let the water out. But then he thinks that'll just make the whole thing collapse.
Yeah.
So they don't do that.
It'll begin to erode the whole.
Of course, the whole thing is going to collapse anyway.
Right. Of course.
I mean that we know where this is going.
Oh, is that where that's going to go?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't.
So Unger sends that engineer by horse twice to ride down to the town of South Fork, which is the next town downstream. There's several towns between them and Jamestown, but
So
Jamestown
he's like Paul Revere running down to go.
He goes and he
to
sends a
town.
telegraph warning to Johnstown. Unfortunately, due to numerous false warnings, the warning doesn't ever get to town officials.
Oh no!
Because they're like, yeah,
Crying wolf.
you guys again.
You guys again. You rich guys up there again.
They
You want to watch us all scurry around like a bunch of paupers?
Yeah. Are you guys up there with a telescope laughing? You know? And plus, at this point, the water is already like 10 feet high in several parts of Johnstown.
I was going to say, because they've now narrowed their river, right?
Right.
So they're already flooding.
Yeah, there's people already trapped in their houses, can't get out of town. And finally, the men give up on the dam. They're like, at 1:30, they can't. They're exhausted, and it's futile. There's nothing they're going to be able to do. So they just wait. Meanwhile, in Johnstown, as I mentioned, the water's already 10 feet high in places, and people are trapped. Just before 3 p.m., the dam collapses, and it sends a torrent down towards South Fork, which is the next town down. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for South Fork, they're mostly on higher ground.
Yeah. Can you imagine watching that go by?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, can you imagine just standing up on, maybe you are on higher ground and maybe you're okay, but you're just standing there and you just see the valley that come through. I don't think, I mean, now we might be a little desensitized to it because we've seen that sort of thing in like CGI on films.
Oh yeah,
and things.
movies, yeah,
but
absolutely.
Then, and even now, honestly, I don't know that I would be able to comprehend it fully.
No. Well, and so a lot of people raced to higher ground. They had, they could see what was happening, and people moved to higher ground. But 20 to 30 houses were destroyed, but only 4 people perished.
Okay,
considering what the tally is at the end of this,
that's okay. For an entire dam to collapse, that would have been sad but acceptable losses to some degree. Yeah, but that's not where we end.
However, there's another town just down the way called Mineral Point, and they're the next to be hit. They get hit so hard, the water comes through there at an estimated rate of 420,000 cubic feet per second.
Oh my God.
Which is apparently middle of the road for the mouth of the Mississippi, which ranges from like 300 to 700,000. So it's like the amount of water going out into the ocean from the Mississippi coming through that town.
Oh my God.
And we're at the rate of that town. All that remained afterwards was bedrock. Every structure was gone. All the topsoil was gone.
Yeah.
All the subsoil was gone.
Stripped everything, right?
Down to rock.
Yeah.
16 were killed. So we're at like, 20 now. That's still peanuts compared to that.
Considering what just happened.
Right.
That's still reasonable.
Unfortunately, there's another town, East Conemaugh, which is the next in line.
Goodness.
And at this point, the water's so filled with debris, it resembles, quote, a huge hill rolling over and over, according to one witness.
Yeah.
So I think it's brown.
Yeah.
It's got
Trees
logs
and
who knows what else is in there. Yeah, houses.
Yeah, rocks. That's pushing gigantic rocks at this point. Too.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the train engineer John Hess hears and feels the rumbling of this, and he puts his locomotive in reverse and races back into town with his whistle blowing the whole time, which apparently saves many because they just start running. However, still 50 died, including passengers on trains in town that were waiting, to leave or whatever.
Wow.
So we're at like, what now, 70 dead?
Yeah, about
70 dead, 3 towns. There's yet another town before Johnstown. This one is Woodvale, and 314 of the 1,100 residents are killed.
Oh my gosh. This is way more than I thought we were talking.
And Cambria Ironworks is in this town, and it picks up rail cars and miles of barbed wire.
And probably like rail and everything, right?
And miles of barbed wire.
Oh my God. So now this rolling, tumbling thing is now armed with barbed wire and
rail,
trains.
Yeah, trains and trees and houses and cows
stone
and horses.
And bodies of people
yeah.
and soil and everything.
It's crazy. So it hits a little. So I think it's 57 minutes, a little less than an hour after the dam collapsed.
An hour.
Yeah, it hits because I think it's like I don't know, 14, 15 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
Down.
Wow. And it's still got that much momentum. It's
but
going
at
down
that
a valley,
point,
so.
the waters are traveling at around 40 miles per hour and up to 60 feet high, filled with all this stuff.
Right. Still coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Some managed to reach higher ground or rooftops, but most were, obviously caught up in the floodwater and wrapped in, barbed wire and crushed by debris.
Yeah.
And drown, obviously.
So a quarter of that last town is done for.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like almost a third,
almost
maybe.
a third.
About a quarter.
And now it's going. Is this now? They're now headed to Johnstown.
And now it's hit Johnstown. Those that did survive had to wait for hours to help if they managed to like climb on top of something or float downstream on a piece of wood. Apparently, they mentioned bodies were found in Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah. But so the flood races through town, decimating it and hits the stone bridge. And I forgot to mention that it's already hit a viaduct at it was upstream. It hits a viaduct, and it's in the let's see, where was this one that it hits this? Oh, okay, it's between South Fork and Mineral Point. I forgot about that. It hits a 78-foot high Conemaugh viaduct where the water's paused briefly because it's like a dam. It's all the debris is crushed against it. So it pauses for about 7 minutes,
and then
bursts again. The whole then
to build up, because of course that's just building up behind it, right?
So it's
getting
worse.
It's getting yet another it's building up again to explode again, essentially is what it's
and
doing.
the whole viaduct collapses.
Wow.
And so now and from there it hits Mineral Point and moves on. But once it hits Johnstown, it races through town and hits another stone bridge that actually carries the railway.
Right.
And everything backs up against it like a dam. Mm-hmm. And now the water gets so high, it rushes back through town the opposite direction.
Comes back.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you didn't get it the first time,
you're
going to get it the second time.
You're going to get like a sand spit kind of thing. It's going to
from both directions,
it's
right?
It's going to hit and explode upward, and it's going to be just this turmoil of like tumultuous water.
But it gets even worse, Mark.
Can it?
The debris at the bridge catches on fire. And I don't know, and it burns for 3 days. So people get washed into this raging inferno of barbed wire, bodies, trains, and trees.
And burning. This must have seemed like the apocalypse.
It must have seemed like the apocalypse.
Like there were religious people out there who, and especially at that time, a lot of them, who would have thought, and with no other information and no other way to understand what's happening, would have thought that this is the apocalypse.
I can't even imagine. And they said when the floods recede, the debris covers 30 acres and reaches 70 feet in height. And it's so dense with its massive amount of barbed wire and everything. It takes them 3 months and dynamite to clear up the debris.
I can imagine. I'm surprised 3 months. I'm surprised they got it done that quickly, to be honest, without some of them, I don't know.
Yeah, that they could do it in 3 months?
Yeah.
It's interesting that the 14.55 million cubic meters of water is what came out.
Wow.
At 2,209 people were reported killed. However, years later, one person said, I didn't die. So apparently it's 2,208 is the official total. It was at the time, largest loss of civilian life in the U.S.
I mean, that's
17 million in damages, which equates to about 490 million now. So, I mean, all told, it doesn't even equal a Jeff Bezos yacht.
true.
The damages. So, I mean, it's really probably not that big a deal.
Which would have just sailed, which would have just, do you think the yacht would have stayed in the lake, or do you think it would have gone over with, and if it had, it probably would have survived. I don't know. What would happen to the yacht.
You're so far removed from everything. Maybe it would have you wouldn't even notice what was going on.
May not have noticed. Hey, the water level seems a little lower.
They're playing Xbox.
Don't worry about it.
I feel a little bit of rocking here.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
What's amazing about this is that really nobody was held responsible.
Wow.
Because the laws at the time kind of protected.
Nobody knew anything back then.
Right.
They didn't know stuff. They didn't know how to sue rich people.
Was one person really responsible?
Yeah, there is kind of something to be said for that. I mean, and the guy who said no years before died already.
He was already dead.
He could have maybe been pinned to the wall. Who knows?
Yeah, and there was a lot of lawsuits. They lost everyone against the club.
Well, of course.
And some other interesting things. I mean, there were things came about because of that. That we adopted some British types of liability laws to hold people liable for things. But another one of the things that was interesting is one of the first outsiders to arrive was Clara Barton, the nurse and founder of the American Red Cross.
Oh, wow.
And brought 50 people with her, and they were there for 5 months. They had donations and help from 18 foreign countries, totaling about $3.7 million.
Oh, my goodness.
The last known survivor died in 1997 at the age of 108.
108?
Yeah. He had some stories to tell.
He had
Kids were complaining, and he's like, you have to walk uphill both ways in freezing rain? Let me tell you about my childhood.
He really just had one story to tell because that's...
But he told it every day.
I know, I was going to say, because if you're that guy, or anybody who survived this thing, like, nobody wants to hear anything else you have to say.
That's right.
Like, hey, you know what? Let me tell you, I went down to the store today. I don't want to hear what you... I don't want to hear that. Remember this one time I was on a ocean liner, and this... No, I don't want to hear that.
His name was Frank. Frank, the newspaper's here again. They want to hear about the flood.
They want to hear about the flood.
Right.
Well, I was going to tell them about that time that, I saved those kittens from
I want
a
to tell them
burning
about
building.
my Nobel Prize.
Nobody cares about the Nobel Prize, Frank. Nobody cares. You survived the flood. And it was probably called the flood.
It was called, yes.
It's like we are in the virus. I keep hearing that, and kind of it sounds very like, again, we talking about movies. It sounds very like the virus.
Like there's only been one, right?
Yeah,
it was called the Great Flood of 1889.
But around town, it was the flood.
Unfortunately, though, this area had many more floods.
Well,
and they have all sorts of things commemorating all sorts of floods. Of course, none of them had 2,208 fatalities. But yeah, they had a lot more floods.
Well, you know what? You should. Are there any? I'd really be interested to see like where people still have cities or even build now, like below a dam.
Oh, how about Lake Dillon in Summit County, Colorado?
Yeah.
Below that is like what is it? Silverthorne.
Yeah.
And you drive over that thing, and every time I go over it, I say, imagine if this dam collapsed.
Of course, I'm sure everyone does.
Yeah.
Like this whole, yeah. And I know some of those are older because, of course,
right.
Silverthorne was there for a long time, and the dam. But I don't think it's something that they do anymore. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I wouldn't want to live in that valley. I don't think
there
I'd
was
want to do
that dam that collapsed in Michigan. What was it, like 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody died, but it pretty much ruined everybody's property and property value because... So I remember the story pretty well. It's pretty interesting, but basically some people got a big, had an estate left to them with a lot of money, and they were trying to think of what do we do with all this money so we don't have to pay taxes on it.
Oh man, I ask myself that question
that's
every
what
day.
I think. If I got $100 million, I think I don't only want 60 million of it. and have to pay 40 million on the 100 million, because 60 million isn't enough.
No.
I'd rather take that money and come up with some elaborate scheme to avoid paying taxes that requires me to have to think really hard and pay a whole bunch of other people to come up with this convoluted scheme.
I have that same thought every time I get my paycheck. Every time I see my paycheck,
You're
I'm
like,
what do I do to just stop paying these taxes?
Right, you buy like some exotic bird seed that you send to Thailand that gets,
I write it off.
Right, and then you end up in cryptocurrency and you're on the Silk Road buying drugs, and I don't know what happens. But
It's a
anyway,
slippery slope.
in this instance in Michigan, these guys decided to buy a dam that was in Michigan as a way to reinvest their money and not have to pay taxes on it. And then they would generate income off of like it's hydroelectric or something like that.
Yeah.
Except they did zero maintenance on it and it started losing money. And it was like, you should have just paid the damn taxes and taken your 60 million or whatever and just lived your life. But no.
You got to get tangled up in some sort of nonsense.
Some dumb scheme.
You can't be busy enjoying yourself. Your $60 million. You've got to be worried about the $40 million that you didn't get.
That's right. And so the dam collapses, floods a bunch of homes, and all the people who lived on this lake no longer have lakefront property.
Yeah.
And now they just have a gigantic mosquito-infested mud pit.
And I've seen the photos of it. And it's like 30 feet away from your house. There's this mud patch. And then there's a dinky little postage stamp of water that you could get to if you could get to it. But see, that sort of what that sort of makes me think about is, I told my kids this recently. I told actually, it's come up a few times. Obviously, really little things. But I've asked my kids like, hey, I don't know, maybe they took something sometime they weren't supposed to from somewhere, or whatever. Not like they stole something, but I don't remember. I was
going to say like a car.
Yeah. They took the Fabergé egg. Let's say a Fabergé egg, just for the conversation. So they took a Fabergé egg, and they got away with it. And I whatever it was, and I was like, I found out about it, the Fabergé egg, and I was like, but aren't you like always worried someone's gonna find out? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, was it worth it then?
Right.
Because if you do get away with it, you know you did it.
So if you're like what is it? You're like a psychopath. You're a complete narcissist. You don't have that.
Oh no, I don't.
Right?
I was just being.
Oh yeah,
parental.
You don't have it. Like if you took the Fabergé egg, everything's good.
Oh yeah, I don't care.
You're just trying to.
No, I had read a book and I was just trying to impart the wisdom. Yes. But me, I have no feelings whatsoever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I take stuff all the time.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
You take my stuff all the time.
I stole someone's mailbox on the way over here. Yeah. Just to do it.
Yeah,
I don't need a mailbox.
And you just dump the mail out on the way too, because you don't really care about the mail.
Yeah, I don't need a mailbox. I don't need the mail either. It's not addressed to me.
This is the thing, Mark. Humans, you can't live with them. You can't live without them. And without them, we would not have a show called Help Is Not on the Way.
That's true.
Because certainly that just wouldn't be a thing, right?
We need people.
Right.
Get out there.
Get
there to it.
Do dumb things.
Get going. We got another podcast called Are We Recording? We need content, people.
Right. Lots of content.
Do something.
We have to spend time trying to find this content.
You thinking about hiding some tax money? Do it.
And then call us.
Just ping us.
Right.
We'll take it. Anything. Please, anything.
I'm not taking the tax money or anything like that. I just want this story.
I don't want your mail either, by the
right.
way.
No.
I don't want you to sending your mail over to us so we can open it.
Right.
Get paper cuts.
And then I got all this whole like bin of recycled, paper that I got.
I got enough mail buried in my backyard.
Right.
Undelivered mail.
Did you get rid of those bags of mail, in your basement?
Oh yeah,
from when you were a mail carrier.
That's right. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did that. I buried them in the backyard.
Okay, you buried them. So they're not in the basement anymore. They're in the backyard.
You never know. You may need them one day. I would burn them, but you never know. You might need them one day.
You got a big pile. You got a big, cloud of smoke.
Totally telltale sign of someone. Every time I walk by someone's house, I'm thinking they're burning mail in the wintertime.
Right.
Must be burning mail again. The Johnsons.
Because that's what I'd be doing.
Heck yeah. It's cold, but I know they're burning mail. I know what you're doing. Under the cover of cold, you're burning mail. Okay, this is Help Is Not on the Way.
Help Is Not on the Way. I'm Kevin Ballman.
And I'm Mark Dustin.
We'll see you next time.